Good morning. It's great to see everybody here today. Welcome to Summer Stories Chapel. It's a special chapel that we look forward to every fall. So every summer, hundreds of Lee University students travel around the world to broaden their horizons and to oftentimes express the love of Christ as global servants. This morning, we're going to hear from 5 of your peers who travel to parts around the globe. They're going to share briefly some of their reflections on what they experienced. I'm going to introduce all of them up front, and they're going to come up in succession without any further introductions. So if you would, hang here with me for a second, and let's hear all 5, and you'll see their names up on the screen as they come forward. So to lead us off is Lily Robinson. She is a junior from Plant City, Florida. She traveled to Colombia and Ecuador as part of the singers trip and also as part of the Spanish department. Following her is Quay Kennedy. Yes, the basketball team is here today. Fantastic. So Quay is a sophomore from Columbia, Tennessee. They traveled to the Dominican Republic as an entire team, so we look forward to hearing from him. Third is Kirsten Griffin. She's a senior from Dayton, Tennessee, and she did a longer-term medical missions trip to Honduras. And fourth is Thomas Lake. Thomas is a sophomore from Tampa, Florida. He went to Tanzania and he summited Mount Kilimanjaro, so I'm sure he's going to talk with us about that today. And wrapping us up today is Sarah Millsaps. She is a senior from Jonesboro, Tennessee. She went on the psychology trip to various European countries. If you would, help me welcome to the stage to lead us off, Lily Robinson.
Hello. When I arrived at Lee University 2 years ago, I received a piece of advice from an upperclassman Spanish major. And this piece of advice was to get to the point where you can dream in Spanish. And I thought right then, that was going to be my goal for the next 4 years. I wanted to get to the place where I could lay my head down and literally dream in Spanish. So flash forward to this past summer, I had the great privilege to go to Colombia and Ecuador first with the Lee Singers for 2 weeks. And then also for 4 weeks with Lee's Spanish department. So 6 weeks total in Latin America, South America, and it did change my life. I was so thankful to go to South America with singers before the department trip because my director, Dr. Moffitt, gave me a lot of opportunities to translate for him, and I did not know that that would be such a confidence booster. One of the highlights of that trip was when I translated for him as he taught a 2-hour music master's class at a university in Ecuador. This experience alone taught me so much about learning through doing it, but also it taught me one profound lesson, that God does not perfect your craft and then start using you, but that he continues to craft and mold you as you walk faithfully in your calling or in your passion. And that was a reoccurring theme for me this summer. When I got back to my room from translating, I would always be so exhausted, but in the best way possible. It really is amazing what you can actually do when you have no other choice but to do it. Another reoccurring theme this summer. On the month-long department trip, I learned so much about God, about the people, about myself. Just to name a few, I learned that I really am a picky eater. I have accepted the label that people have put on me. But this summer, I was making power moves for all the picky eaters, okay? It was like one small step for Lily, one giant leap for the picky eaters. Okay, did you like that one? Okay. So anyway, but I found out I like pineapple, fish, plantains, just all these weird things I thought I hated. And then, yes, just wait for it, I even ate guinea pig. I did. It was a delicacy. I ate it. So I'm sorry to all the hamster lovers out there. I'm the bad guy. Anyway, but I still don't like rice, so I am picky. I also learned that Colombians are extremely honest. I mean, just blunt, really, but in a loving way, in a humorous way. I learned that everywhere in Ecuador is about an hour away. I learned that slang words in Ecuador really just have different meanings in Colombia. And then I also learned a lot about Colombians' love for their country. I think a lot of times in the United States, when we hear about Colombia, we think of cartel and drugs and, the risk. But what I encountered was really the opposite. I encountered a beautiful country whose people are really some of the happiest people in the world, I'm convinced. The hospitality that I was shown every day was a life-changing and impactful experience, to say the least. Lastly, I learned a lot from my host family. So just about every week on the trip, we stayed with a different family. And it was amazing that at the end of any given day, when I would think about the memories or the conversations, the inside jokes and stories that I shared with my host family that day, it would just hit me. I'm like, all of that was in Spanish. And yet it didn't even feel like I was learning or like working at something. Just, it felt like I was living. I was forming relationships and I was learning the language through those relationships. In closing, I would like to share with you a phrase that a young man in Ibagué, Colombia, used when he was telling me about his story. Shout out to Juan David. Maybe you're live streaming. Anyway, it's called Toques de Vida, and it translates to touches of life. And it's this idea that life gives you little nudges, little experiences that bring you to where you're at today, and that point you into the direction of your future. And that's what this summer and these trips were for me. They were a touch of life that pointed me in the direction of my future. On the last day of the trip, I laid my head down, closed my little eyes, and when I woke up the next morning, I had dreamed a whole dream completely in Spanish. So to Leonardo, oh thanks, that's nice, sorry, thank you. So to Lee University, Dr. Stefanel, Dr. Moffitt, gracias por ayudarme a alcanzar mis sueños. In other words, thank you, Lee University, for propelling me forward in the passions of my calling. Thank you.
There we go. All right. At the end of July, I traveled to the Dominican Republic with the men's and women's basketball team. And from the point we first got there, I was nervous, I would say. I mean, as soon as we got to the airport, we walked down. I'm talking about everyone was staring at us. It was really horrifying. Because, I mean, it made me think about the movie Taken, because, you know, because when the girls got there, they was all scared. They was excited, though. I mean, I was excited as well. But just seeing everybody just with their eyes on me, just almost like now, it's a little horrifying. But, the second day there, it was the day I would say changed my life the most. We went to a handicap orphanage for kids battling terrible cases of scoliosis. We walked in. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. Walked in a room, and I would say I was stuck. I mean, seeing the kids, they were sitting there tied up to the beds. Most of them couldn't say anything. And it was like one or two who actually speak to us. And the kids were like so bad to the point to where like you would say their hands were like at their like behind their back to their knees. And they were like, I can't really explain it, but it was really bad. But there were two kids there, Victor and Ella. They were doing multiplication tables, and this is probably the highlight of my week. They were doing multiplication tables, and I'm pretty good at math. So, and I mean, they were doing some that I've never seen before. They was doing like 6,000 times 228. Like, I've never done that before. And I mean, they doing it, and they like 12 years old. But we were sitting there helping with them, and they began trash talking, whatever. And I mean, that was really good. As well as then, when it came down to the games, I mean, it was pretty bad when it came to our games. we knew that we weren't going to get any calls, but I mean, we just had to fight through it. And at the end of the games, we didn't really know what to expect. But when I say like the kids were like coming up to us, like asking us for like our sweaty socks, our sweaty arm sleeves, and like we thinking like, why would you want those things from us? Like, it's pretty disgusting. But I mean, when you like think about it and you look back at it, it's like those things actually can mean something to them. Because I mean, we're from the U.S. or whatever, we have it better than them in certain situations. And I mean, we can just go out and buy another pair of socks, but as they look to our pair of socks, they might wear them. They might look at them as a trophy or just something to remember us by. And actually, at the end of one of our games, I actually swapped jerseys with this old guy on the other team. I'm talking like old, like gray hair old. Like, like he don't look like he should be out there playing, but you know, he did. And in that case, I mean, he hit the game-winning shot on us in our last day there, in our last game there. And I mean, why would I not want to swap jerseys with him? I mean, it's like a retirement thing, I would say, because it looked like he almost done. But, but overall, I mean, it was a real life-changing experience. I mean, I believe every single one of us came out of our comfort zone. That's something that we really wanted to do, as well as putting others before ourselves. The whole time we were there, we were thinking about others. We didn't like draw any attention to ourselves. We always looked to help another person, and I feel like God really gave us a reason to go there, and I believe we served His purpose in doing so. Thank you.
Oh my God, that's way too tall. That's a little better. Hi. This summer, I had the incredible opportunity to live in Rio Viejo, Honduras, while interning at the Dyer Rural Hospital, also known fondly as the Jungle Hospital. This missionary clinic served rural villages south of La Ceiba, about 15,000 people spread out over 1,000 square miles of mountains, rivers, and jungle. I like to tell people it's the greenest place I have ever seen. I was first introduced to the region, the hospital, and its extraordinary staff in the summer of 2018 through the Science Department's Global Perspectives trip. A couple months later, I felt myself being pulled back, and so I applied for the clinic's summer internship. It's 10 weeks long. See, I came into college dreaming of medical missions, and seeing the Lord bring this whole opportunity together absolutely filled me. But of course, when expectations and reality collide, there tends to be carnage and some disequilibrium, but also heart change and growth. Every new experience made me lean that much more on the Lord. Lean is kind of a graceful word. It's more like I kept tripping over my own feet into the arms of the Father. Pushing into the newness and tension and challenge was truly transformational. With my fellow interns and our missionary mentors, I felt like I was pushing limits physically, spiritually, and emotionally, probably most important, lingually, almost every day. Guys, I'm not fluent in Spanish. I'm just really not. Everything just felt harder than I had expected it to feel, honestly. I mean, maybe it was the humidity. I don't know. For example, while looking through my journal in preparation for today, I found this entry. The scope of pediatrics, one side of the arrow. I'm rocking a sleeping baby while she receives a breathing treatment. And she stays asleep through the entire treatment. She doesn't wake up, even with a mask covering her tiny face. Really sweet. On the other side, not even an hour later, I'm cornering a screaming toddler, trying to take her temperature. So this is a lighthearted example of how two-sided the experience was. One moment feeling total belonging and confirmation, but the next feeling frenzied and incompetent. But in the crushing and pressing, God had truths waiting on the other side. There was one particular mobile clinic that really stretched me. It was several hours away from the region in which we normally worked. So the hospital in Rio Viejo has been there for 12 years, and the surrounding communities know it's not going anywhere. But in this new place, the clinical experience was different. It was desperate. There's one health center in that area, but these centers are often undersupported, understaffed, and understocked on meds. especially in rural areas. Over the course of 2 days, our mobile clinic saw nearly 300 patients. Those workdays were intense and crowded. Before we even arrived to set up, patients were lined out the door, having already waited for hours and prepared to wait for hours more. I was mostly directing patients from the waiting area to the providers, and I got to listen in on close to 100 consultations. For weeks, and honestly, still now, I wrestle with their stories, with their diagnoses, wondering how an insulin-dependent diabetic whose life could depend on their medication multiple points in a day is going to make it in an area like that. I struggled digesting the information, and probably rightfully so, but my inability to wrap my head around it all came out as frustration with God. Thankfully, graciously, God met me in my questions again and again. Indeed, Dios es fiel. God is faithful. Long before I or any missionary stepped foot in Honduras, God has been holding these villages close to his heart. I had been presenting requests to God as though he were unaware or uninvolved, when really he's our source of righteousness and justice. I was smacked with conviction and humility as I recognized God as truly omnipotent and omnipresent and alone holding the keys to real redemption and restoration. Where I had only focused on the problems and struggles of these communities, God began to turn my eyes to the richness and beauty of their way of life. And I started to see his kingdom in the brightly colored cement homes on our mountain road. More than anything this summer, I learned that any place, anywhere is bankrupt without the hope of Jesus Christ, restoring our relationships with the Father and with each other. These revelations brought me from a place of paralyzed questioning to a place of motivated hope. And now, back in the States, as I face my last semesters of nursing school, I remember. There are physical and spiritual wounds that are hard to look at, but we push in still. And when we keep showing up to do the hard things and ask the tough questions, we find God waiting there for us, faithful to complete the work he started long ago. And one more thing. The area I was talking about, the ministry just bought property there to build the second Jungle Hospital. Thank you.
So as Mike Hayes said, I did an individually arranged trip this summer to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. A lot of y'all gave oohs and ahs when he said that, but I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all don't really know what it is. Just being honest. So Mount Kilimanjaro is the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. At 19,000 feet, it is ginormous. It's far above any airplane that you would ever get on. It's really, really, really high. Really high. Anyway. So a lot of y'all are like, why would anybody want to do such a thing? That sounds horrendous. And it was awful. But the only reason that I did it was because my dad tricked me into doing it. It was a trick all along. He went when I was around 4 years old. My mom and my dad, they divorced when I was around 3. And him and his best friend did this as kind of like a feel better, you know what I'm saying? So he did this, and he came back with his full-grown beard, talking Swahili, looking like he knew what he was talking about. And he's like, bro, it's amazing. You got to come with me. I'm like, sure, like 4-year-old self. I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's do it. And I hate myself for saying that when I was 4. I really do. But I agreed to do it, and in my second semester, my freshman year at Lee, he calls me and he goes, Thomas, at the end of your mission trip, because I was doing a mission trip that summer to Tanzania anyway, he said, we're going to climb Kilimanjaro. You promised it to me when you were 4 years old. Let's do this. And I was like, wow, you really used that against me. But it really was an amazing time. So I decided that we were going to do this, and my dad was like, all right, well, I'm going to get in shape. I don't know what you're doing at Lee, but I'm running every day. I'm lifting weights, and I went ahead and lost 20 pounds. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Meanwhile, I was stress eating cookout trays, preparing for my final exams. So, amen, right? Amen. So I was in no shape to hike Mount Kilimanjaro whatsoever. Didn't prepare at all, maybe hiked Star Mountain a couple times, and stayed the night up there, that was about it. So at the end of my mission trip, I show up, my dad flew in, we met up with the rest of our team, which is about 6 other people, and the 8 of us were gonna hike Mount Kilimanjaro together. So we took a 3-hour bus trip to the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, and we met these 28 local Tanzanians. And they came up to us and they said, yeah, we're gonna help you get up this mountain. And I was like, there's 8 of us and there's 28 of these guys. I mean, this must be pretty hard if you're gonna carry all of our stuff. So it was pretty much a pampered camping trip because they carried all your stuff for you. They set up your tent, and they even brought a toilet along with them. There was like one guy that it was his job to carry the toilet, get rid of all the poop, get rid of all the pee, and he got a really great tip at the end of the week, but it was pretty awful. But anyway, so first day, we started off, and I'm thinking, okay, it's the first time, like it's the first day of the week, like it's probably gonna be a really relatively like easy hike, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like 2 hours in, I'm like, okay, well, the base camp has to be soon. Like there has to be a tent site like coming up close. And we ended up hiking for 8 hours into the pitch black through like the tropical rainforest of Mount Kilimanjaro. So it's hot, it's humid. There's bugs that I've never seen before. They're like really big, and I'm getting like really scared. And I'm like, so I'm just having all these doubts, like this is gonna be horrendous. I just had all like the wrong ideas that I was just gonna hop off and just like turn back around. I was like, nah, this is just not worth it at all. So we got to the campsite finally, we set up, and I go in the tent, and the tent is like from there to there, and me and my dad have to lay in this thing together, and we're like have that much space in between us. And I realized that I'm gonna have to sleep that close to my dad for a whole week, and I was like, I like my dad, but that's not gonna be a whole lot of fun. So day by day, it just keeps getting worse. It's like 7-hour hikes each and every single day. But I was getting to know the guys on the team better and getting to know the locals a lot better too. And hearing their stories were just truly incredible. I mean, these guys hike Mount Kilimanjaro like 2 to 3 times a week just to get paid to like feed their families and stuff. It's incredible. And they've usually done it since they were like 15 years old. You ask them, it's like, when did you start hiking the mountain? I was like, oh, I used to carry bags on the top of my head, like 80-pound bags on top of their head, hiking the mountain like, as fast as they could to set up your tent site before you. And they've been doing it since they were 15 years old. And the oldest guy that was doing it was 65. And he was doing it like he was nothing. And we're like, man, you're running slow. And he was like, okay, you want me to go my speed? Let's go. So he started taking off, and he was like a mile ahead of us. I was like, okay, don't slow down, 65-year-old man. It's okay. It's okay. we get it. We get it. don't abuse us. Anyway. But the third day was the most eventful day because it's this thing called the Baranga Wall. And you actually have to rock climb for 3 hours. Yeah, like free rock climb, no ropes, no like anything. You're just like free climbing for 3 hours. And you look back and it's just a drop, a really long way. So we're hiking like that for 3 hours. But the worst part is those porters, the people that were holding the stuff, are doing it with 80-pound bags on their head, and they're just walking past you like it's nothing. And you're so scared, and you're like nervously climbing up these rocks, and they're just doing it with an 80-pound bag on their head, just running right past you. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, a couple days later, we finally reached the campsite where we were going to summit. Like, this is the day. We are hyped. We're finally going to get off this mountain. It's terrible. I've been sleeping in a tent. I've been eating really bad food. It's time to get off this mountain. So we get to the tent site the day before we hike Kilimanjaro, and the leader of the trip comes in and tells us that we're going to begin our hike at midnight in the pitch black when it's really, really cold. I don't know if y'all know this, but when you get higher, it gets colder. So it was really, really, really cold. And at night, we had to like be in sleeping bags with sweatpants, with hoodies, and like covering your face up to like here. So you're sleeping like that, just trying to keep warm. So he tells us that we're going to start our hike at midnight in the pitch black so that we can get up and see the sunrise. So at midnight, all 8 of us get in a line with our headlamps on, and you're only looking at the people in front of you, and you're just going up for 7 hours in the pitch black, can't see a thing. It's 16 degrees. 16 degrees, yeah, that's not Celsius, that's Fahrenheit. It's really cold. Anyway, so you're following this line of people for 7 hours, and I just was like, I'm so done. I don't know when this thing's gonna end. I kept looking up, and I was like, I bet that rock right there is the summit. And then we get to the rock, and then there was like another rock, and I was like, that's it. And I just kept doing that for like 5 hours, and I was like, I'm really tired of playing this game. This is not a game anymore. It's just not fun. So finally, they were like, okay, the summit's right there. And I was like, I swear if you lie to me one more time, I will fall off this mountain. So they told me it's right there, and I was like, sure, okay. But that last little 100 meters is probably the steepest thing in the world. And my heart was beating out of my chest, and I was like, this is it. I'm just going to roll off this mountain right here. And hopefully, like, I just land in such a way that I don't die, and that I'll be at the base of the mountain, because I don't want to hike the rest of the way down. But finally, I see the sign. I was like, okay, this is the summit. And when you hike, I don't know if any of y'all know anything about hiking, but you do these little, like, switchbacks things. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? And I was like, screw this switchback. I'm running straight to the summit. I'm running straight to that sign, and I'm laying down, and I'm going to die right there. So that's exactly what I did. I sprinted as fast as I could to that sign. I found a rock. I threw all my stuff to the ground, and I laid on that rock for a good 15 minutes recovering with my heart beating out of my chest. And my dad comes over, and he's trying to have an emotional moment with me because, I mean, this is an amazing thing. And I'm like, Dad, I'm about to die. I get this was an amazing moment for you, and it was for me too, but I can't breathe right now. Just give me like 10 minutes. But anyway, I'm laying on this rock, and suddenly I see the sun begin to rise over the horizon, and it's absolutely beautiful and just awe-inspiring. And after I finally catch my breath, I begin to realize where I was. I was 19,000 feet in the air, far above any airplane or any clouds in sight. And I just began to take in the beauty and creation of God. And I was like, wow, I'm so small and so minute to your creation, God. Yet you have chosen me, you have saved me, and you've loved me like I can't even imagine. Like, you are so good, and you are so great. And then they were like, okay, time to get back down the mountain. And I was like, we were up here for 5 minutes. We hiked for 5 days, and you want me to get down this mountain? And they're like, yeah, and you took a picture. So we took the picture, and we left. And that on that same day where we started the hike at midnight, we got down the mountain around 7 a.m. We got down from the mountain around 9 a.m. They're like, okay, you can take a 2-hour nap, and then we have another 5-hour hike to get to another campsite, and then tomorrow you'll get off the mountain. So you didn't even get an off day. But eventually we made it off the mountain. We made it to the bottom, and me and my dad came home, and it was just an amazing trip. So thank you.
Just give me a minute. All right, hi y'all. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about my trip that I took with the psychology department to Europe. And before I begin, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Sargent and his wife Beth for believing in me. And during my time in Europe, I traveled to Austria, Switzerland, and Germany. And this is an experience that I will never forget, and the friends I made will last a lifetime, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity that I had. With that being said, me being the little Tennessee girl that I am, I had never been out of the country, and let alone in an airport. And I came up with 3 things that you all should probably know if you've never been on a study abroad trip. All right, so number 1, when you're going through security at the airport, if you have thick hair like me, they will search through your hair. And when they are finished, do not, I repeat, do not walk away to your friend and say, I don't know why they would search through my hair. It's not like I could have a bomb in there. Luckily, the workers did not hear me, but I learned very quickly that is something you could not say in an airport. And then number 2, so when you go to Austria, at Lake Wolfgang, you can pay $20 to rent a boat. And I thought this was going to be like boats like we have back at home, and you go tubing on the lake, and that is that is not how that worked out. Our boat stopped working in the middle of the lake, and we had to paddle ourselves back with our hands, and about got run over by a large cruise ship in the process. And I truly believe that the Lord spared us that day. All right, and then number 3, kind of a more serious one. Do not be afraid to do things that you usually would not do. Make new friends, and do not be afraid to open up with them and share your heart. During this trip, I was able to come out of my comfort zone and share a story with them that I'm going to share with you all today. So just bear with me. I have a brother named Matthew. And I think they have a picture that they're going to show them. Sorry, y'all. My brother Matthew was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia in 2014. And this became very hard on my family. Sorry, y'all. I began to attend Lee, and his health became worse. In September of 2018, my brother's cancer relapsed, and he was put on hospice. I knew what was about to happen, and Lee allowed me to go home and spend a few days with him. And while I was in his hospice room, one of the topics that we talked about was my trip to Europe. And my mom told me, "Sarah, honey, there is no way that we can afford for you to go on this trip." And my brother told me the typical brotherly response, "You'll get over it." I left that weekend to come back to school and had no idea that that would be the last time that I saw my brother. On October 9th of 2018, my brother went home to be with the Lord, and I understood that although my heart was broken, he was no longer hurting. Christmas came, and this was my first Christmas without my only brother. I sat in my house opening Christmas presents alone with my mom and dad, and my mom handed me one last present, and it was from Matthew. I opened the present and found a note from him, and that note read, "Merry Christmas, Sarah. When we were babies, Mom got a life insurance policy for the both of us. She did not know that she would have to cash it in for either one of us while we were so young. So to you, from me, I want you to stop worrying about how you will pay for your trip to Europe, because it will be paid for by me. Never forget how much I love you, and I am so proud of you." The moral of my story is, if you're getting ready to go on a trip, never forget to thank the people that are helping you go. Hug them tight and remind them that you love them, because I would do anything to hug my brother and tell him thank you for helping me go on my lifetime experience. Thank you all.
We are so proud of our students, and I know that there are possibly hundreds of other stories that are very similar in some ways to each of these students sitting here today. But that's one of the cool things about being at Lee is you have the opportunity to experience things that are well beyond your culture, well beyond your control sometimes, and well beyond your comfort zone. And that's sort of the heartbeat of who we are as a school. It's sort of the heartbeat of who we are as believers in Christ, as followers of Jesus, that we allow Him to move us in ways that maybe we wouldn't move ourselves. And no matter what your story may be, we want to encourage you to continue to allow God to shape and to mold your life in the way that He wants to, by giving you cool experiences, amazing stories, lifetime opportunities to do things just like these students talked about today. And so I want to encourage you, as you look towards what God has for you next, open your mind, open your eyes, and open your heart to the possibility that it may be in some place you've never been, in a culture that you don't know, with a language that you can't speak, with people who look at you funny, but they love you and they're kind and they're courteous. Why? Because it's the human way. Deep inside every single one of us is that kindness, and it's our job to cultivate it, to mine it, to pull it out of each other, to be kind, to love the world, and to love each other in the process. And so we thank you to all of our students for their summer stories. Can we give them a round of applause? Amazing. Before we dismiss today, Dr. Khan wanted me to remind you that we're moving the time for our soccer match tonight to 7:30. So if you're planning on being there tonight, be there at 7:30. So that's when the match will start tonight. We want you to all come out and support our teams for those kinds of things. So he wanted me to remind you of that. So will you please stand with me as we say the benediction? Let's pray together. Now let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. God bless you guys. Have a great day.